Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video. And I did say that I was going to review this video in my earlier video that I am probably going to release today. And that is about Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. But this video is going to be about another fighter that I find extraordinarily talented. But this is one of the few fighters that I tend to criticize, at least somewhat. I'm not going to say on a super duper general basis, but that I do tend to criticize here and there. And that is going to be Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, Mr. Devin Haney, of course, recently apparently got in a little bit of a Twitter beef or a Twitter war, a spat with Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis, because Devin Haney said that he would like to fight him, and Gervonta Tank Davis apparently overall did not seem extraordinarily interested. And I've been saying this about Gervonta Tank Davis for a very decently long time. I like him as a fighter. I think that he is an extraordinary talent when he is at his best. But the dude almost has 30-something fights on his resume, and the biggest win of your career is against Leo Santa Cruz, who probably should have not even been in the ring with you in the first place. In my opinion, Gervonta Tank Davis is one of those fighters that you can tell that he truly is an A-grade talent, but you can't really determine how truly great he actually is because he actually hasn't really been in the ring with any legitimate A-grade fighters. And I like him. I think that he's a great talent, but I really need to see you in the ring overall with someone who is actually legitimate and probably similar to your own same size. And when I say, fighters like that, I'm talking about fighters like Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, Vasily Lomachenko, Devin Haney, maybe a George Kambosos, if we're talking about 140 pounds, Josh Taylor, Regis Prograis, Jose Ramirez. I need to see these fights, okay? It just is what it is. He is one of the few fighters that I tend to get on the ass of because overall, Gervonta Tank Davis has such a weak resume for the amount of fights that he has on his record. It just is what it is. And some people may say, well, he don't seem to criticize Teofimo Lopez for some of the stuff that he says or some of these other guys. Right, well, Teofimo Lopez is kind of in the middle of the rebuilding of his career. So I can maybe understand if maybe he is going to take a couple of easier fights until overall maybe he needs to take some bigger ones. But even I have gotten on Teofimo Lopez overall, about not taking on certain fights and some other fighters. Like I said, I try to keep everyone overall to the same standards. And Gervonta Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, those are two fighters that I've gotten on the ass of before because they talk all this shit. But at the end of the day, when it comes to taking those big fights, they don't seem that serious. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, you're going to see the difference with what Dante overall has to say about Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. We all know that when it comes to a Tyson Fury or a Canelo Alvarez or someone like that, a Vasily Lomachenko, he has a completely different amount of disrespect overall for those fighters when allegedly they are avoiding big fights. But then when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis, who's pretty much fought 5 bums in a row when it comes down to it, Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Rolly Romero and a couple of these other guys, Mario Barrios, people who have never even really been legitimate champions. DontesBoxingNation treats Gervonta Tank Davis with kitty gloves. All right? And no, you can't do that. If you're going to be a logical and objective commentator, you have to try to hold everyone to the same standard. And that's a big part of the reason why I review his channel. Because I get some people that come on my channel and they say, well, don't you think that what DontesBoxingNation does is a good thing because he exposes certain racist points or he exposes certain things that, maybe other channels or maybe ESPN overall, that they have certain racial double standards. And yes, sometimes that does need to be exposed. But let's not sit here and act like DontesBoxingNation is just Moses and is just overall going to lead everyone to the peace land. That's just not going to happen because DontesBoxingNation, he is just as bad as any pro-racial or over-emotional commentator that I've seen out there. To be quite honest with you, he may even be worse. This is the same guy that tried to allege that Tyson Fury overall needed to be stripped of his belt and expelled from boxing because allegedly he put an egg weight in the glove and they poisoned Deontay Wilder. Does that someone who sounds like a logical and objective commentator to you? So it's no offense to people out there, but if you more than likely follow DontesBoxingNation, it's probably because just like him, you're not too bright in the sport yourself. It just is what it is. And I'm not trying to offend anyone there. That's just, it is what it is. Anyway, but anyways, we're going to review this video. We're going to see what he has to say about Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. Let's tune in.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So when Gervonta Tank Davis, he posted something responding to Devin Haney and then removed his post before Devin could even respond to it. Devin, he ended up responding to some other fans talking about Gervonta Tank Davis on Twitter. And Devin said he never going to fight nobody. He's 27 with a Mickey Mouse belt, and the best person on his resume is Pedraza. F out of here. Tank responded by saying,
I would say that the best fighter debatably on his resume is Mr. Leo Santa Cruz. But at the end of the day, I don't think that anyone takes a look at Leo Santa Cruz or Leo Santa Cruz, however you pronounce his name, and says, wow, he's a Vasily Lomachenko, or wow, he's a Ryan Garcia, wow, he's a Devin Haney. No one really takes a look at him like that. So Gervonta Tank Davis is eventually going to have to get in the ring with some of these bigger names, but I just think that he's being very highly protected. What I also think is a possibility is that it seems that they're really trying to go on a collision course overall for that Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight. Could they maybe overall be waiting for that fight to occur? Maybe overall could the Gervonta Tank Davis side maybe be waiting to fight Mr. Ryan Garcia? That is very highly possible. But at the end of the day, you're looked at as one of the biggest assets in all the boxing. Eventually, you're going to have to get in the ring with some of the bigger names. Because Gervonta Tank Davis does have what we call star power. He is an excellent fighter, and he is very entertaining to watch, not only in terms of his punching power and what he can do to those fighters in the ring, but also in terms of his boxing ability. He is a great all-around boxer, but I need to determine how great he is because you need to get in the ring with some of these bigger guys. And when I say bigger guys, I'm talking about higher caliber. So we'll see what happens.
why they paying me 5 times more then, like I have all the belts? But bum ass. And another thing, stop trying to be me, chump. The people starting to notice. Then Devin Haney, he reminds Gervonta Tank Davis how he was calling Devin Haney out, saying that he's going to fight Devin Haney, or that's who he wants, assuming Devin Haney gets past George Kambosos. But after the fight, we didn't hear anything from Gervonta.
And that's why I've always gotten on Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis's ass. A certain amount of people may wonder why I don't get on Canelo Alvarez, because in my view, Canelo Alvarez, he's not ducking elite tier competition. Yes, these guys allege that Canelo is avoiding David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo, and it is true that those fights have not happened yet. But Canelo Alvarez is pretty much taking fights that, at least in certain terms, are somewhat on a similar caliber. Like when we talk about Jamal Charlo, in my opinion, Jamal Charlo was right there, probably maybe even a little bit lesser in terms of boxing ability than a Caleb Plant or a Billy Joe Saunders. Now, he'd probably be a little bit better than Callum Smith, but Callum Smith is probably more of a puncher. And on top of that, he's naturally bigger than what a Jamal Charlo is. So those wins, in my view, were legitimate when it came down to it. So Canelo is always getting in the ring, usually with some sort of A-grade fighter, whether it be Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, whether it overall be, someone like a Dimitri Bivol, a Danny Jacobs, a Gennady Triple G Golovkin, an Araceli Lara, and Austin Trout. He's always usually getting in the ring with someone that is very decent pedigree. When you talk about Gervonta Tank Davis, this dude has called out allegedly so many names. He said that, oh, I want Lomachenko, I want Devin Haney, I want Josh Taylor. But then when it comes to actual fight time, he never mentions another one of the names again. And it's no offense against Gervonta Tank Davis, but it has gotten real tiresome. And after a while, you just have to take a look at it. It's like, dude, are you going to take a big fight or not? At the end of the day, you're supposed to be an alleged 3-weight division champion, but really those belts, when it comes down to it, they're useless. At least the majority of them, because, when it comes really to only legitimate belts, you've really only been a legitimate champion of 1-weight division. It just is what it is. Because the other ones, I think you were either an interim champion or overall, I believe some sort of other champion. And I don't count that as a real champion. I'm sorry, I just don't.
Tank Davis is pretty much what Devin Haney said. Then more recently, Gervonta Tank Davis, not too long ago, he posted this on his Instagram. He says, it's not about right now. It's the long run, which clearly sounds like he's talking about a fight with Devin Haney. Not right now, but it will happen eventually. That is how that sounds right there. Now listen, guys.
Well, I would agree with you, Mr. Dante, but let's get to the point. Why are you treating Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis with kitty gloves? Because we all know what you'd be saying if it came to a Tyson Fury or a Canelo Alvarez. If Gervonta Tank Davis was a Caucasian fighter and ranked the way that he was, you'd be on his ass 24/7. No doubt about it. 365. All right? 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. So let's be real.
the last 2 or 3 years, we have been talking about the Fantastic Four that at one point included Devin Haney, Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, and Teofimo Lopez. I think deep down, all of us knew, including the racist boxing fans, knew that Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis would be the last two standing out of the four. And
Well, I predicted that Devin Haney, in my view, would be George Kambosos because I think that Kambosos overall got a little bit lucky that Teofimo Lopez underestimated him. But I need, if we're really going to include Gervonta Tank Davis in that big Fantastic Four, or at least say that he is the second best of the 135-pound division, don't we think overall that he should probably win one of the legitimate belts first? Now, if you want to talk about in terms of a talent, I certainly would understand that, at least debatably. But dude, at least fight a Lomachenko or fight one of the top five guys in that division. Like, who are you fighting? Like Isaac Pitbull Cruz, Rolly Romero? Like, I'm sorry, man. I mean, I don't want to say that these guys are bums. Well, Rolly Romero's a bum when it comes down to it. But Isaac Pitbull Cruz and a lot of these other guys, these guys are bums. These guys are guys that are never going to be legitimate champions ever in their career. At least they'll be very lucky to be. So it's like after a while, you just have to take a look at it. Like, dude, you have 27 fights on your resume. Like so many people always love the bitch about how Lomachenko and Artur Beterbiev are certain, some of these European fighters because they usually come straight out of the amateurs, and they'll say, well, why are they ranked on such a high level? It's because within 20-something fights, they're facing top contender after top contender. Gervonta Tank Davis almost has 30-something fights on his resume, and the dude has only really won one or two legitimate belts in his career. So it just is what it is. And don't get me wrong, I get it with the hype of the European fighters sometimes, how it can be obnoxious. But listen, if Gervonta Tank Davis is going to make my top 10 pound per pound list, he has to fight some legitimate top contenders.
Even though Ryan Garcia hasn't lost yet, that is the way it's pretty much playing out, especially if things go according to plan.
Well, you know what? We'll overall see what ends up happening with that because I don't like the way that Gervonta Tank Davis really looked in those past couple of fights. He did not really look himself, and to be honest with you, it looked like some of these sizes, it looks like overall, and some of the pressure, it looks like some of it is getting to him. And on top of that, there's been some arguments with himself and Floyd Mayweather Jr. Could it be maybe that Gervonta Tank Davis is starting to mentally break down a little bit? Who knows? And we all know that he's not the smartest dude, or at least that he doesn't make the smartest decisions outside the ring at times. So it just is what it is. We'll see what happens now. That is not me trying to prey upon his downfall. But what I am saying is that hopefully Gervonta Tank Davis returns back to top peak form.
And Ryan Garcia,
because at the same Gervonta Tank Davis that I've seen against Rolly Romero shows up against Ryan Garcia, he might have one hell of a time.
Garcia actually takes the Gervonta Tank Davis fight. They're in serious negotiations right now. Gervonta is pushing very hard for this fight, so I believe there's a very good chance it can happen. And since once again Ryan Garcia was part of that Fantastic Four, a Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight, it makes all the sense in the world. But like I've always told you guys, if Gervonta is not fighting against Ryan Garcia next, there's no other fight that makes more sense than fighting against the undisputed champion in the lightweight division, Devin Haney. Unless Gervonta Tank Davis is going to fight Vasyl Lomachenko. That would be the only exception. That would be the only other.
Why would facing Vasily Lomachenko be the exception over Devin Haney? Devin Haney is the complete undisputed champion. We all know what you would be saying if it would be Canelo Alvarez, or if, let's be real, a fighter of a different complexion. So why is it okay for Gervonta Tank Davis to face someone like a Vasily Lomachenko instead of the complete undisputed champion of the world in the division that he's mainly trying to compete in? Does that make any sense? It just is what it is. Now, don't get me wrong. If Dante were a logical and objective commentator, and if he said, well, I would like to see him versus Lomachenko next, I would get it to a degree because Lomachenko still on a lot of lists, still has a top 10 pound per pound pedigree, and he's not going to have very many of the years left. Devin Haney is 20-something years old. I believe he's about 23, 24 years old. He's going to have a very decently long time if his career ends up panning out the right way, or at least there's going to be, overall a decent amount of time to make that fight. But all in all, let's be real. If this were a white or a Latino or overall, a different complexion of fighter, he would have a way different energy level on this. Way different.
Fight outside of fighting the undisputed champion that would make sense. Now, when you pay attention to the exchange between Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis, what stands out the most is clearly you hear Devin Haney talking about making the fight, and you hear Gervonta Tank Davis talking about how much money he makes. Now, listen, it's great to be making a lot of money, but at the same time, there is no pound for pound list in boxing of who the richest is. Fans, they want to see who the best is. I mean, fans don't check boxing news to see what Gervonta Tank Davis' new net worth is, right? I mean, not too many people are writing articles about the new car that Gervonta or Devin Haney bought, or the new chains that they bought. When Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis get into an exchange, the reason why boxing fans are so intrigued is because of the possibility of them fighting against each other. And this is the reason why I said in my last video about this exchange when Devin Haney or when Gervonta Tank Davis was telling Devin Haney, Isaac Cruz, he know who is who, and so do you. And then he deleted his post. And I said in that video, even though Gervonta didn't say, okay, well, let's go ahead and fight, just the fact that he's going back and forth and he's dissing Devin Haney, that's making boxing fans want to see the fight even more. Gervonta once again said that he makes 5 times more money than Devin Haney makes. If he makes 5 times more than what Devin makes, that means he makes 10, 20 times more than his previous opponents. And all of them got a Gervonta Tank Davis fight. Now, once again, like I said.
Right, Dante. So, just like you would say with Canelo Alvarez, he's avoiding overall the best of the best. At least that's what you would say. But the difference is that at least Canelo Alvarez takes fights that are decently acceptable. So that's why I've never really been on Canelo Alvarez's ass, because I've never really been a true believer that Canelo Alvarez just ducks and avoids certain competition. Now, if you want to maybe say that here and there, that he skipped the fight, or maybe there are certain styles that, maybe overall he kind of avoided, maybe you could allege that at the best, or at worst. But when it comes down to it, usually Canelo is going to go in there against pretty decent tier competition. Gervonta Tank Davis is not even facing A- level fighters. Some would maybe even debate that he's not even facing B-level fighters.
It makes all the sense in the world for Gervonta to take on the Ryan Garcia fight first. Because if Gervonta can knock out Ryan Garcia, which a lot of people feel that he will, and then you consider the fact that Devin Haney has just become undisputed in the lightweight division, where he actually beat the man that beat the man that beat the man, which was Lomachenko, that makes Devin Haney versus Gervonta Tank Davis the second biggest fight in the sport of boxing today, right behind Spence and Crawford. So once again, hopefully the Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight gets made. We've heard a lot of rumors that a backup plan might be Gervonta versus Isaac Cruz in a rematch or something like that. But the only way...
Which there's no reason for that rematch, in my opinion. That fight overall has already passed. Isaac Pitbull Cruz is not an A-grade fighter. He's never going to be an A-grade fighter. There's no reason for that rematch to happen. But watch what Dante has to say here.
It would make sense for Gervonta to be doing a rematch with Isaac Cruz is if Isaac Cruz was to get a huge win over someone like Jose El Rayo Valenzuela or Riviera, the Muhammad Ali lookalike.
Now, does anyone raise their hands here? How many people know who the hell those fighters are? Because I have never heard of those fighters in my life. Never heard of those fighters in my life. That would be like claiming on the law that Naoya Inoue, when he beat, Nonito Donaire, that's a 100% legitimate win. When it comes down to, or an A+ win. Like, come on. Now, maybe Dante is not saying that would be an A-grade win, but come on, Dante, let's be real. There's no reason for an Isaac Pitbull Cruz fight, and if this were a different complexion of fighter, you would be on his ass.
Cruz got a win over someone like that. That would definitely justify a rematch between Dave.
No, it wouldn't. The only way that Isaac Pitbull Cruz justifies a rematch with Gervonta Tank Davis, in my view, is if he beats one of the top 5 guys there. If he beats a Lomachenko, or if he beats overall the Ryan Garcia, if he beats one of those guys, that's the only way for a rematch. Come on.
And Isaac Cruz. Let's see how it all plays out. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out.
But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that would be very particularly interesting. And once again, you see the difference between how he treats someone like a Gervonta Tank Davis and a Canelo Alvarez. And that is why his channel is not to be relied upon. Don't get me wrong, not every single one of his points is always incorrect or, in my opinion, a bad point. But he's just as bad as any overall biased commentator out there. And that's why his channel, and that's why a lot of these LDBC new media channels, they can't be relied upon as far as you can see him. Just is what it is. But anyways, hopefully Gervonta Tank Davis will get in the ring with someone very decent eventually. I do believe that they are waiting for that Ryan Garcia fight, but we'll have to see what happens. And the same is going to have to go for Ryan Garcia. Now, his competition level has rose a little bit as of late. He is overall still somewhat, a little bit in the making, but he is going to have to gradually step up his level of competition. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's really about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.